Welcome to Joan of Art, the weekly podcast where we investigate and celebrate people who make art.
Dear madam, dear sir, dear madam, dear sir, dear madam, dear sir, dear madam, dear sir, dear madam, dear sir.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Joan of Art podcast. We are here in the Alive and Social Studios in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have a super exciting show for you this week. We are going to be interviewing three very amazing, successful, inspiring artists that are all working in different mediums. Tacoumba Aiken, who is a public artist, a community artist, a painter, and a muralist, and the Mayor of Lowertown, St. Paul. Sonya Berlovitz, who is a costume designer who has been working in the Twin Cities for more than 3 decades. And Paul von Stoetzel, who is a director and a documentary filmmaker. I am over the moon to have this guest on this week's Joan of Art show. This person is very special and near and dear to me, but he's also really an icon, the Mayor of Lowertown, a wonderfully creative painter, muralist, community artist, and public artist, Tacoumba Aiken. Welcome to Joan of Art.
Well, thank you. I don't have that many quarters, but I'll give you as many as I can for all of those great words. So, hi, Joan.
We've worked together a little bit. We haven't known each other a super long time, but I know that you have been creating art in the Twin Cities for many years now. You are very well known for the murals that you produce and a lot of the community artwork that you do.
Yeah.
I am curious to know what is happening for you currently.
Okay, currently, first mural was in 1973, so up and from that time to this time, I've been doing a lot of public art with, the Bigger Seed project. Stoetzel and I are two of the lead artists, and then we have 2 master artists that had come up with the idea of design and working with the community of the North Side.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Bigger Seed project just in general for people who aren't familiar?
Well, there used to be a mural called Celebration of Life mural that was on Olsen Highway and Lindale leading into the freeway. It was a curved 200-foot 16-foot to 20-foot high wall that was there for many years, then got torn down for urban renewal and development of housing. And so people were missing that, wanting to know why it happened and all of that. So this new project has been created in the spirit of John Biggers and in the spirit of training these young African-American artists to be public artists or artists of whatever kind of form, a lot of which have taken that to heart. Now we have 13 new artists who have been we're creating a fence that goes across Olsen Highway that leads towards the ballpark, and on both sides of the fence we're doing enamel panel designs that are based on some of the stories and of John Biggers, of Being Davis and John Lockhart, the late John Lockhart. He's passed away recently. Stoetzel and myself and these 13 artists have been listening for years, actually, and then putting together these designs in a new medium for me, which is enameling on metal, which will be more durable than anything I've done, including clay tile. And so that'll be gracing Minneapolis shores, because I'm a Lowertown boy, and people will be able to see that and see it at a distance, or walk across the bridge on the sidewalk and see it up close, going to the ballpark or leaving the ballpark.
That's exciting. This enameling process is intriguing to me because I know a little tiny bit about it, but I know that it was a group of artists, yourself included, who were sort of given this orientation about this process, and it's a newer?
Well, it's the process that we're using. Now the artist escapes me. That was out of the Seattle, Washington area. He had created a vertical kiln, and so you can fire on both sides. You can enamel on both sides for large scale projects, which both Being Davis and John Lockhart had used, and also Jacob Lawrence. So you're talking about a legacy of African American artists. And these new artists, including myself, working on the same process. And we created a new design for a kiln similar to that, and which was built at the Chicago Avenue Fire Arts Center. Perfect place for it. and been learning how to use it, working with it. And I'm the only one on the list that hasn't been approved yet because I was designing the whole thing. I'm like, come on, guys, give me a break. But no breaks.
No breaks. I was going to say, so you guys designed the kiln?
Well, the kiln was designed, basically taken from the other artist. And I hope I get his name before I end the show.
It's okay.
I may have to call it in and use a different voice,
right.
like. No. Anyway, yeah, it was designed because his was maybe 15 years ago that he designed it. This one had to be code compliant to this place, and so they worked on it. And I know Roger Cummings did the schematics for it and of juxtaposition.
Excellent.
So we have a lot of talented people. Heather Doyle, of course, at the Chicago Fire Arts is the woman that can handle metal like nobody you know.
She's amazing.
She is amazing.
She's great. She's got great energy. She's super talented.
Yeah.
So that's so exciting. So the city of Minneapolis is really the entity that's pushing this project along. Am I right?
The city of Minneapolis, Mary Altman is somebody that has worked with the other project. She was there all that time. And we've tried to do several things, but, things change so quickly. When John and Bing were hired, they had designed these monolithic things that we were going to do in metal, but the property got sold that we were going to do it on, and then there was no other property you could do that kind of design because everything is site-specific.
Right.
So it just happens in the public art world. The public art world is hurry up and wait.
It is, and it's so much problem-solving all the time, so
All
much
the
for
time.
such... just a not controllable setting typically that does go through changes, and there's many different people who have to sort of like give their permissions.
Only 90, huh?
Only, I know.
You got a good project if you only have 90.
I know. It's amazing, though. I don't think that people really, if they're not experienced in doing public art, realize how much coordinating goes into it.
Well, my whole thing is I'm a visual artist, painter, collaborative artist, art activist. I started doing community collaboration, art exchange, and engagement with intermediate arts in the 80s called People, Places, and Connection. And they were good to be able to turn it into an institution. And, it's not something that I wanted to do because I want to create these things like Johnny Appleseed and drop the seed and then nurture it for a while and get out.
Right.
Because I don't want to lose my creative juices, what I'm really here for, my spirit. I have to create art all the time. And it gets hard when you get caught up in a lot of, I won't just call it bureaucracy, but just the politics of creating art in any kind of city, profit or not-for-profit. There's so many things about insurance. All the liability things are ridiculously scary.
Yep.
So some of them protect the company, but a lot of them protect the artists.
Yes. I mean, that would be the hope. I think at the end of the day, a successful project is one where most everyone is happy with the outcome, and
Right.
people feel like they were treated fairly and paid fairly and that, everything's going to be okay. But, it's not always the case. And when things change or when there's surprises or things that you can't anticipate, you just have to roll. But I think you're a person who does that fantastically.
Yeah, but that's a hard one to train, and it's a hard one to ask artists to tolerate.
Right.
And so there's still some negotiation that has to be done there so that when people want things that you say you have to wait and all of that, you still have to think about this artist that is looking not only to get paid, but to have a project done that then becomes credentials to get more work.
Right.
So if you have a project that stretches out 8 years, you're not too happy about that.
Sure. And you have to put your name on it, too. So if things start to change and that creative process starts to get imposed upon, I think that too can be devastating to a project.
It is, and it's devastating to the artists. And, I understand when people get upset and ticked off, and I'm like, yeah, but you can decide to, somewhere along the line, to stay or walk away.
Right.
And get to the next project,
Right.
And that's what I've been doing for, 30, 40, 45 years. Okay, that's not years.
Well, I wanted to comment on that, though, that you are well known throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, but you're really St. Paul's son. And I think that you really own that. You are a celebrity in the Lowertown area. You're a magnetic person in general, but I think that you really kind of have laid out this demographic, and you're really a big presence there.
Well, I love people, and that's very hard to do. because people don't always love you back.
Sure.
You know, and but I try to find ways to do things which some people think I'm doing as an individual, until they get there and see that I'm not even anywhere around anymore, that the project is there. Like the Light Bright, you know, St. Paul Foundation did that, asked me to be the one to make that happen for the $1 million idea for St. Paul. I did not get $1 million, folks. You know, if I get $1 or $2, that's good for me. But I was given a challenge that I hadn't done before with another material, another medium that I hadn't done since my daughter was, or so somebody was playing with the light brights. Okay, I was playing with the light brights. And, you know, but to be able to do something where it's almost 600 light brights, 598,000 light brights, and you win the Guinness Book of Records.
Yeah, I was going to say, for people listening, Tacoumba created the world's largest light bright.
Right, right. And it upsets the people that thought they created it, and we're going to keep that number. But I had 600 volunteers, from district court judges to homeless people. That's because my persona and the people that I have working with me just gather everybody. We don't eliminate anybody. Everybody should be able to have a part in it, so that now it's permanently in the Union Depot.
Excellent.
And you can go there anytime, day or night, and sit in front of it in the waiting room for waiting for buses and trains and all of that, or just walk by it. And it just radiates this kind of amazing energy. If people ask me, how did I do it? I wouldn't know unless I looked at the film that had that, you know, the slow motion with time lapse. Time lapse. Yeah. And when I watch the time lapse, I'm like, man, I draw really fast. No.
So, because when you are actually actively creating art in the community, do you kind of go to another place? Like, you know what I mean? People talk about that.
You know, when I do my own art, I go into some other space. I feel like my ancestors are working with me and saying, no, stupid, paint it over there and all of that. They don't say stupid anymore, but they used to. But I was just thinking the other day, I use paint, I use metal, I use glass, and people. People are a medium to me. When they say, what about this? I don't say no. I'm like, go try it. And I'm like, oh, man, that's a great idea, you know? And so especially with the light bright, I was throwing one color, and that was the color that I designed it for. And because I'm colorblind, I accidentally throw a couple of other colors in, and then I see they're contrasting. I'm like, yeah, do that. I don't tell them how to do that. Everybody has a creative sense about them. Anybody that likes picks their shirts or likes nature, you know, or the color of the sky and the mountain, and all these experiences are normal aesthetics, you know? And so I let them do that, and we do it as a collaborative way. I might say, why don't you move it over here, or put it up there too, or tell somebody, that's a good idea, you should steal that. I mean, you should borrow that and put it over here.
Yes.
And then people learn from each other. They don't have to just learn from me. I don't know everything. I learn from them, you know.
Well, I think that really speaks to why you've had such success with the community, and having the community be a part of the work that you do. In a lot of instances, I've seen you do live mural painting in a public space and completely engage.
Easy peasy.
It is, I know, and I just don't think that not everybody has that really vibrant, vivacious personality that feels welcoming. It feels like I can be a part of this.
Another thing I love is music. So you got to admit, I had great musicians playing for me with that one.
That was off the hook.
Yeah, I mean, when I did that was part of Made Here.
Yes.
You know, and but then I did a thing with McNally Smith when I had a retrospective there, which had their orchestra, or where they did improvisation, and I painted live to that improvisation with 40 of my pieces.
Wow.
You know, that just came out of one artist talking to another artist and a curator. He doesn't call himself Billy Franklin. He doesn't call himself a curator. He teaches art history at a music college.
Interesting.
You got it. McNally Smith's got to get creds for that, because
not
everybody is doing that. But the arts should never have been separated. You know.
Yep.
Training, yes, but a little bit of the other mediums and other forms should always be included, because the art students are going to do it anyway. When I was at MCAD, they were musicians.
Right.
From electric guitar players to sitar players. So, hey, you got to do something.
I found out later that some of the musicians that you had that week that you did the live mural painting in City Center in downtown Minneapolis. We're also visual artists. For example,
Right.
Chris Carroll.
Yes.
I didn't know. I just thought she was a singer-songwriter, but as it turns out, she's like an amazing visual artist.
She's actually one of the bigger seed artists, you know?
She's great.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And she's kind of, you have to kind of call her an actress, too, because she's been playing with pieces at Intermediate Arts and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Yep. So you have introduced me to a lot of really amazingly talented people.
As well as you've introduced me, you know? That's how we expand this language and this dialogue so that we are really inclusive. I'm just so tired of people hating anything.
Of course.
Because if they're breathing, they should be really appreciative of that. And that people are forgetting about this air. If we keep acting stupid, somebody's going to say, what's this button? And nobody's going to say, don't press it. And then all the air is gone. And
Yeah.
we're all related.
We need each other. We need
really
each other.
do, you
We're
know?
interdependent.
We
I
are.
believe in that too. So, well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Is there anything else that you want to comment on, or?
I just want people to know that I'm an artist. I create art every day. That's what I do. I don't necessarily have to do a show for you to come and see my work. You can look at TacoumbaAiken.com. That's my website. TacoumbaAiken@gmail. You can find me. You know, don't come to my door at 12 o'clock at night because I'm probably not there.
Right.
I'm probably singing somewhere with Donald Washington. You know, I mean, I love doing a lot of things that I don't think I'm a professional at, but I know I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if anybody loves something, they should try it as long as it doesn't hurt anybody and it doesn't hurt themselves.
Yeah, that's great. And we love you, Tacoumba Aiken.
That was me that went that, oh.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you,
and I
Joan.
hope we keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
The term foodie can sometimes come across as a tickle pretentious. BT and Lydia are here to demystify the term and reclaim it for the sake of good food. Their weekly podcast brings in fellow foodies and culture creators from the Twin Cities to talk about all things food. Find this duo only on the Alive and Social Network. The Rusty Gatenby Review is the entertaining show about entertainment from movies, music, and more. Award-winning TV guy Rusty Gatenby and his review is the podcast with the biggest cast in entertainment, part of the Alive and Social Network. You can get that Minnesota connection to Hollywood and beyond any time of the day or night simply by clicking on the RustyGatenbyReview.com. That's the RustyGatenbyReview.com, part of the Alive and Social Network.
Welcome back to Joan of Art, the weekly podcast that investigates and celebrates people who make art. I am so thrilled to have this guest on my show today. Her name is Sonya Berlovitz. She is a costume designer who has been working in the Twin Cities for a very long time. She has an incredible reputation. She continues to be super prolific. Sonya, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joan. Glad to be here.
Yay. So I think that you have a very unique and interesting history here in the Twin Cities. You've been a costume designer for 35 years?
35 years. I started in 1980. That was my first show I designed professionally. Over those 35 years, I did take 3 years out and go back to school in Chicago to get my degree. I went to art school there. And also went to school for a year in France
Oh, wow.
for fashion design.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So what got you interested in creating costumes, making garments?
Well, I kind of grew up in the theater. For starters, it was in my family. I think everyone in my family has been involved in theater in one way or another.
I was gonna mention that you have a sister who lives in town who's also
Right,
very
Barbara.
active. Yes.
Barbara Berlovitz,
Okay.
who was one of the founding artistic directors of Theater de la Jeune Lune. And she and I actually performed together when I was about 8 years old. We did a show together at the Peppermint Tent near the University of Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this is just how you've been brought up. So you took to sewing and you took to designing, or did someone teach you in your family, or?
Well, my mom was a professional seamstress. She started sewing when she was 15. She worked in the garment district of Minneapolis on First Avenue.
Wow.
So I did learn quite a bit from her and started sewing from a really young age.
Yeah. So how did you get going then with your first show? What was that? What was your entry point in 1980 when you got started?
I actually started by sewing the costumes for a show for Theatre de la Jeune Lune, and the designer left after that show. And the artistic directors knew that my background was in sewing, and I had studied some design at that point. And they asked me if I wanted to try to design the next show. And so I did, and it was a show called 1929,
Ooh.
which took place at the Southern Theater. And I think it's still, well, it's one of the biggest casts I've ever costumed.
Your first one.
On a budget of $750.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
So you made it happen, though. So
Yeah.
they knew you had the skills to pay the bills. That's good.
I had a very good time, and I thought, this is something I can do.
Yeah.
And so...
And do well. I'm sure you were really celebrated. That's quite an accomplishment. So were there times in your career that you got to work with larger budgets? Did that change, or has it been constant?
Yes.
Okay.
The larger budgets primarily come from the regional theaters, like the Guthrie is a regional theater.
Sure.
And the Guthrie was actually my first involvement with a regional theater. I did a show there called Triumph of Love in 1993, directed by Dominique Serran from Theatre de la Jeune Lune.
Nice.
And I think the budget was something like $20,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, and that's not uncommon in a regional theater setting to have a budget of that size, although more and more their budgets are getting cut a bit, as well as all the other theaters in the country.
It's like a sad trend that I think we're seeing and feeling in a lot of different areas.
Right.
That's interesting. So when you get ready to do a show, first of all, how do you select what you want to work on? Do things kind of happen serendipitously, or do you actively pursue shows that you're interested in?
Both. I have a good word of mouth. What would be the term? Word of mouth.
You have an awesome reputation in town. Yes. I don't know if that's what you're trying to say, but I am familiar with that.
Well, I get asked by people who know the kind of work I do, so I'm lucky that way. And then sometimes I do seek out particular shows that I hear about, and I'm pretty good going after things if it's something I want to do.
That's great. Do you collaborate with, the set designer? How do you get informed about like how you want to go about creating the costumes? I suppose there's research in different ways.
Well, as far as collaboration, we usually do have group meetings where set designer, lighting designer, sound designer, and me, costume designer, will all get together with the director and present our work and talk as a group about the work so that we know we're all on kind of the same artistic page.
That makes sense. Yeah. Fun.
Yeah. So, and then, of course, before that, I do a lot of research, mostly on the computer now. That's one thing that's really changed for me, because research used to be more about going to the library and paging through books, and I've kind of become a computer baby as far as the research goes.
And which is really a blessing, and it's awesome to have all that information at your fingertips. But I've talked to a lot of artists who, have been creating for a long time and who sort of miss the hunt to find, the paper and the illustrations or the photographs or, but I think that's interesting. You can really just do everything from home now as far as that's concerned.
It's a real time cutter is what it is. So and theater is often about having limited time.
Sure.
To create something. So
it's a blessing to have that. Do you use Pinterest?
Yeah.
Okay.
All the time.
Oh, that's awesome. I bet your Pinterest is awesome.
I don't have a lot on there, but I finally did join. I
start looking, and I know it's interesting because I think that, those types of boards, those creative boards, that's been around forever.
Right.
So it's fun to have a medium that, and the social component is so interesting too, that you're like sharing with everybody. And
right.
So, yeah. So what are you, do you have anything that you're working on currently?
Yes. I'm working on, I just finished a one-woman show. There's an Arab-American theater festival at Mixed Blood. And I think it ran last weekend. It opened. I think it's running next weekend. I'm going to see it on Wednesday.
Fun.
I did a show for a woman named Taos Kazem. And I'm also working on a show with my sister.
Oh, wow.
A Shakespeare, As You Like It, which will be at McAllister College.
That's
in
so exciting.
November. I believe it opens November 7th.
Okay.
And I'm also, this is going to sound like the
That's
Jean Loon old home. I'm also working with Bob Rosen on a show that he's directing at Park Square Theater.
And so I'm not familiar with Bob. What was Bob's
Bob
role?
was one of the founding artistic directors of Theater de la Jean Loon as well.
That's interesting. Now, is this something that hasn't really happened? I mean, have you continued to work with that?
I have continued to work with my sister periodically.
Sure.
So we have a comfortable working relationship that way. Sorry.
It's okay.
I can't remember the last time Bob and I worked together. It might go all the way back to Jean Loon's existence, and that closed in 2008.
Oh, so this is intriguing.
But I should say I also have been doing all the shows for the Moving Company, and that was started by Steve Epp and Dominique Serrand, also from Theater de la Jean Loon, and Nathan Keepers and Christina Baldwin. So, yes, I've continued to keep those connections alive.
That's awesome. Well, that makes what's coming in November even that much more intriguing. That it's you're collaborating again, together again. That's exciting. I'm just curious to know how many designers are working in the Twin Cities right now that are as active and as successful as you. I just don't know a lot of costume designers who have had your body of work and continue to work. I was friends with Jack Edwards, who passed away a year or more ago, and I know that he had a really big stake in the Twin Cities scene that was interesting at the Guthrie. But are there others that kind of have that same legacy, this decades long?
I do. I know a couple of people that have worked as long as I have, or I should say as close to as long as I have.
Right.
Like Matt Lefebvre, who is
Okay.
the head of the costume design program at the University of Minnesota, and I've actually substitute taught for him a few times.
Oh, fun.
He designs periodically at the Guthrie and Outstate, and I think he does all the shows at Penumbra.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Other than that, I would have a really hard time estimating how many are working here.
I was just curious because I feel like you kind of stand alone with this reputation of having been here for so long and as successful as you've been, and just that reputation that we keep kind of talking about and how great that is. So is there anything happening that you are excited about that's kind of outside of what you might be doing in theater? Or do you find that in your work you are kind of like all consumed with the show that you're producing? I find that I oftentimes don't get to see a lot of things that I'm not personally working on.
That's very true of me too.
Yeah.
I've sort of made a commitment with myself this year to try and get out and see more shows, because I feel like I'm always working and that I don't get out and see enough. I did actually just see a show at the Bryant Lake Bowl on Saturday night.
Yay!
A group of ex-students from the BA program at the University of Minnesota. That was very fun.
That's great. I know. I think it's something that we all kind of struggle with, but that's cool. So you made the resolution. I did too this summer. I'm like, I need to not just only see creative people when I'm working with them. I need to actually go and like support them and enjoy myself.
Right.
We have such a rich community of artists. It's like, let's go out and have some fun and see some good shows. So, well, Sonya, I'm so happy that you came on the show today. Is there any other place that we can find what you're working on, or do you?
Well, I have a website.
Great. I'm going to share that.
It's www.sonyaberlovitz.com.
Perfect. That's
And
great.
I usually post current shows or things coming up on there.
That's wonderful. Well, check out that website. And Sonya, thanks for coming and being on Joan of Art.
Thanks.
Hey, this is Terry.
And Tracy.
We are going to be starting a new podcast here in Minneapolis called Eat This, Twin Cities. Why don't you tell everybody what that actually means?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a weekly show on food, drink, music, events, and just other randomness. Anything great that's going on in the Twin Cities.
Plus, we're going to be doing some giveaways as well. That's right, prizes. People love prizes.
It'll be a ton of fun. Join us.
Tell us where they can find the podcast.
All right, it is eatthisTwinCities.com, or you can check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/eatthisTwinCities.
So, until next time, eat this, Twin Cities.
Welcome back to Joan of Art. We are here with my guest, Paul von Stoetzel. He is a director, a documentary filmmaker. You've worked in making lots of shorts and music videos. You direct theater, kind of a bit of a Renaissance person, it seems, in the world of directing.
Oh, it's to me almost more odd that you don't see more people crossing over. There are some, like for example, a gentleman who is one of the people who runs Walking Shadow Theater, John Heimbuch. John does some film stuff too, and he's an incredible theater director. So he's one of the guys that does as well. But you don't see as much of it, which is strange. One of the people that always inspired me, and I still dig on in a big way. And I've directed one of his plays. I want to do more. Is Werner Herzog, is Fassbender. And when Fassbender was working, I mean, he did it pretty much to kill himself in a different, faster way, which is what I'm trying not to do as much these days. Literally.
Okay.
I've had a bit much of that at some points when it would be, multiple projects. But I mean, he would do, and part of it was he was around the German New Wave when there were subsidies and there were grants, and he was able to come in under budget. So he'd make, on average, 9 feature films a year, plus he directed about 8 plays, most of which he wrote himself, all in 1 year. And he did this for, I think at that period when he was at his peak, was about 11 years.
He kept that pace for 11 years.
Of course, he died at 33 then.
I was going to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That is so incredibly intense, but interesting. I'm familiar with that director, not tons, but I had no idea about that.
He's absolutely amazing. He was a complete and utter genius. It was fascinating because I got into him. It's funny because he gets known for being so disturbing or more political with his work, but actually he was at heart more of like a very big Douglas Sirk fan, like one of these guys who really loved the melodrama, but he himself had such a dark, intensely dark edge to himself. So it's fascinating to see this heart of darkness come through, but he really wanted to, it's almost this opposite of where you see somebody who does like something more mainstream or accessible and then wants to go more of this dark side. He was the dark side trying to be a bit more accessible for very sincere and altruistic concepts. It was an amazing guy. I'm absolutely obsessed with him.
That's great. I feel like I really can appreciate content that's created for theater that does come from an authentically dark place. I think I'm drawn to that. I'm thinking of Sam Shepard and,
oh, yes.
Some of these great writers. But so is that an inspiration for you?
Oh, hell yes. Shepard, when you get into that, a lot of people think of Mamet, but David Rabe. Rabe he had kind of a heyday, and he's still writing. He still writes great work. I haven't seen anything done, but he got famous for One Piece, which was done into a pretty big feature film with a ton of stars, especially at that point. Sean Penn and Kevin Spacey, called Hurly Burly. But he did, it's 2 bookfuls, so I forget how many plays, of just Vietnam plays alone. And he did one that wasn't that known called Streamers, which actually was done as a feature film that Altman directed, barely anybody's heard of. And it was amazing. When it comes down to it, Rabe is one of the guys that really, really inspires me when it comes to playwrights. But there's so much amazing content and good work out there. I mean, Bug was just done in town. Tracy Letts writes amazingly good, accessible, but yet gritty, but not ridiculous. It's one of the things we start getting into the darker stuff and starts to cross over to, like, say, slasher horror, where there's a place for that and it's fun. But I mean, you lose a lot of the sincerity and the grittiness and that real intensity of where you feel this is something that could happen to anyone. That's why I think what horror truly is.
Mm-hmm. So I became familiar with you as a director from the documentary that you made about the outsider artist, Dr. Evermore. I don't know if I would even call him outsider artist.
They use that term with them sometimes, and I think it's because lack of a better term is what it is, because it's like when you know his full history, then you can get into the doc, then you can get into Tom Every, but it's one of those things of where he's very, very tough to categorize. So that I've heard that. I mean, we even used it a little bit in the doc.
Yeah, it's kind of a term that I think has an interesting dialogue about it. Some people are comfortable with it, some aren't. But so Dr. Evermore was the scrap metal welder who created the Forevertron in Baraboo, Wisconsin, basically a gigantic sculpture park with these really imaginative,
Yep.
gigantic sculptures.
World's largest scrap metal sculpture garden. And,
Yeah.
and then before that, he did all the old school parts of the House on the Rock, which is what a lot more people are familiar with. But he did it when, if you go through House on the Rock, it was more like if you go into the certain rooms, there's the quote unquote engine room, which is much more dark and it's very old school. It's, you know, some people now use like the whole steampunk term, which
Sure.
whatever. I don't really fucking buy it, to be honest. I think it's just putting a label on something that's just become hip and just is a trendy word.
Sure.
But his rooms are just amazingly beautiful. You can see that it's just true craftsmanship. And then one of the things too, and I still believe it's the world's largest working carousel that they still have in there, and it works.
I think that's true.
Yep. And the thing too is that a lot of people lose track of. There's not one horse out of all of it. So a lot of them are like these kind of Goya-esque, like part human, part horse, or minotaurs. It's amazing. That thing is incredible.
I have seen it once in my life, and I will never forget it.
Yeah. Tom, that was Tom. Also, he did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of his work has that impression on a person that it's just so fantastic and it's so imaginative. But you also, another character in your documentary was the artist who created Bishop's Castle. And maybe tell us a little bit about him, because he was, and the way that you portrayed him, I have to say, in the documentary was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank
it
you very
really
much.
showed his vulnerability. But anyway, talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is with all the stuff that I heard about it, is the doc, and we mentioned this in text at the beginning, that originally this doc was like kind of a wandering roadside attractions thing, and then I had all these other places like the Squirrel Jail that's out in good grief, that little attachment to northeast part of kind of Omaha. I completely forgot the name of the area.
Okay.
Council Bluffs. And that place is amazing. Great interviews. I mean, it wasn't that we didn't have people really participating or helping with us. It was not that case at all. The Villisca axe murder house that's in Iowa, like all these places were great, but they were all of those were just kind of bumps in the road. They're all smaller places that we had a good amount of information, but nothing to really sink your teeth into. And then we go to the Forevertron, and we get to know the family, we get to know Eleanor, we get to know the friends. And it was just, we had too much of one place, so I started structuring it where it was like, well, maybe if I find all these, it's almost like a scavenger hunt. I find all these other places, then I find the mother lode here. I'm like, it's okay, but it's kind of hokey. And then I heard about, and it was actually working and living in LA for about a year. And on the travel out, I stopped off with my then production manager, Jen, and we stopped over and couldn't believe that when we saw it. I mean, you crest the hill and you look up and you're like, holy shit, that's an actual castle. I mean, all the pictures and everything that I saw really... excuse me, it didn't do it justice whatsoever. Right. And I'm like, it's a fucking castle.
It's in Colorado.
Yeah, it's in Colorado. If you're taking the freeway, if you're out by Pueblo, if you cut down south and you cut west, then you have to kind of cut back up north into the mountains by about an hour. So that's about where it is. And it's phenomenal. Well, and he's been in the news. I didn't know it until someone posted on my Facebook page that they're having problems. Allegedly, well, not allegedly, someone owns it now, someone other than the family.
Whoa.
Jim is, I need to look this up more and contact the family. I haven't had a chance to, and I feel shitty about that. Jim, because, the family just let me in. That was one of the reasons it became a bifurcated documentary, which especially in storytelling is really tough. You don't tell things in halves. It's something that still, for example, really bothers people about Full Metal Jacket. It's a story told in halves. You don't tell stories in halves. It really pisses people off and rubs them the wrong way. But fuck it, it was just the right way to do this.
Right.
And both guys just had so much in common. Even their age. They're only, I think they're like 2 or 3 years. Yeah, they're 3 years difference. And it was too perfect. And once again, just like when we were with Tom Every and aka Dr. Evermore and his wife Eleanor, the family let us in. We got to know everyone. We hung out with them. They felt safe with us and telling these things. So it was that same fit. It was that same thing where it was like, okay, it's really too bad that we have all this other footage of these great places, but fuck it, this is the way this doc is going to work. But going into what happened,
that's like kind of an artistry to like
It
get in
is.
with a family and have them feel comfortable, because there are a lot of things that are shared. Personality traits and ways that these guys, kind of some of the behaviors that these guys have that actually maybe doesn't shine so
well, and that's what's
positively.
Funny about Jim is that Jim, okay, and we eventually get into this. I'm so glad that other people talked about it, that the whole kind of maniac preacher thing, what he calls it, the rant and raven, is bullshit. For the most part. He has these views and such, and he's very intelligent and studies these things, and he does know it, but like his son says at one point, if he's doing all this hooting and hollering, what have you, and he's fucking screaming at the top of the castle, they get twice as much for the donation box every time he does it.
Wow.
So they started doing it more. But the thing, too, is he does it now, and this is just like, Psych 101 bullshit of me just being around them, but both guys, and for Tom, I think it was more of a choice where he's got this land pirate, this history, and with him, this persona has meshed with his personality, and with that, it's become one. For him, I think it was more of a choice, and he embraces it. And he's gone back and forth where he embraces so much of the artist that then he realized how much he loved still being known as just a worker. And he very much is. I mean, he's worked in scrap metal for 20 years.
Right.
And then with Jim, it's kind of like the persona is something that he kind of had to portray quite often and do this as almost a necessity. And I think there is a cathartic element to it as well sometimes. But I think he did it so much that he's lost with that in his own personality. So honestly, he only did it every once in a while. Otherwise, it's just us hanging out and showing tours. But the big thing, okay, and this is something that when you do interviews about this, it's kind of, hold on a second, that it's a little bit unbelievable. So we're talking to his son. His son, we had not met until we started interviewing at that point when he's fucking with the log, when he's pulling it up and doing all of that work. And it's our first time. We loved him really fast, whatever. We knew he'd been watching us, and he was in there with his family, and we knew there'd been a lot of problems up there, and there'd been court problems. And we didn't push it. And eventually he was like, yeah, we can hang out. Starts talking to us, and that's when he starts telling us, and we'd heard about his brother dying.
It was a very powerful moment in the movie.
Yeah, and we didn't know that. We didn't know any of that when he started talking.
Whoa.
We knew that
On
his
camera?
brother, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, he starts telling us that essentially he was the one that with his chainsaw when he was 13. He went over and chainsawed it was the stump that had gone up from the storm. It was the tree that had gone down, so the stump had gone up. So his brother was 5 at that point. Went and played in there. He didn't know. Goes over and chainsaws it. The stump goes down. He asphyxiated his own brother and killed him.
Wow, I know. That was a horrible moment
that
in
was
the
one
movie,
of
but it's very touching.
Oh, absolutely. And he was so sincere and gutsy. And that was one of those things where it's like, well, and also when Eleanor is going to the other park and she starts crying because when they were getting divorced, he had actually dedicated more pieces of art to her twice as much. And it was another one too, where we get back in the van, and my cinematographer grabs me at the collar. He's like, what the fuck?
What just happened?
I'm like, no, I had no idea, man. I had absolutely no clue whatsoever. We didn't even think we were going to go to this park. It was like kind of a fringe, not fringe benefit. It was just an extra opportunity that we had on a day, because I forget what happened, but our schedule got thrown off, and we still had an extra day. And she was like, oh, there's this one extra park they want to. And the way she spelled it out, it sounded kind of lame. And we get out, this is amazing. This is huge. There was, I forget how many pieces of art. It was 3 rows, and I would say about 3 rows by like 11 pieces of art. So it was a lot out there. It's like about, it was like something from 30 to 40 pieces, unless I'm completely off my numbers. It's been a while since I've been out there. But we go out there, and it was just an extra day of shooting, and we get that.
It was amazing. It was such a touching moment. It made me cry. I feel like we should tell people what the name of the movie is we're talking about here and where they can find it, because it's really great.
Thank you. Documentary is called Scrap. We've got it on iTunes. I forget. And that's been good. We got that through distribution through Orchard, and they've been good to us. But the other one too, where it's free to watch it with just like every 15 or 20 minutes as a commercial, is on Snag Films, and Snag Films is amazing. They've crossed over to having narrative pieces now, but mostly they were documentaries from all the world. You had to go through a process and show them, hey, this got into a couple of festivals, to try and weed out more of the other films and what have you. But yeah, the best is Snag Films that has Snuff on it. Or excuse me, Scrap. Snuff is my other documentary, because apparently I love monosyllabic titles with this.
No, that's great. Well, I would like to know also, though, you're really super active and prolific yourself here in the Twin Cities directing. You don't just do documentary film, you do theater. And so can you tell me a little bit about the projects that you're working on currently? I just got done being a part of the 1 Minute Play Festival that came in from New York. That was a great experience. It was really fun. It was very, very different to do something of where each play was 1 minute long, couldn't be over, so it had to be timed. So, I mean, you had very rigid rules, but sometimes the plays would be written over, but the playwrights knew it. But the cool thing was, I actually personally knew some of the playwrights. In fact, almost all of them. So I got to talk to them, and a couple, most of them came in at one point or another and looked at it and gave me a couple of points, and was like, oh, absolutely, that's a great idea. Got along. I'm one of the guys. I got into directing pretty much through writing. I get along with writers, kind of like whenever I hang out with like artists and such, because I don't really consider myself one, to be honest. And really?
Yeah, I know. People give me that look. It's, I don't know. A big part of it was like growing up, and for me, like I remember so much when like there was the 2 monikers of arts and literature, and for me it was like when I'd hang with artists and such, there's a different mentality. There's something else. When I hang with writers, I still get along with them really well.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as like the way you can tell an outgoing writer is that they stare at your shoes instead of yours when they're talking to you, and even though beyond all that, I'm doing this, I'm hosting, and then we're gonna have one of my films play. So I'm adapting all these crime writers. We have this thing called Noir at the Bar, which was started originally by Jedediah Ayers. He's a writer that I've also adapted. He's down in St. Louis. Noir at the Bar is amazing, and it's all over the nation. It's all over the world now. Australia. There's one happening in Glasgow. I know there's been some other in the British Isles, and we're going to be out there on the 23rd at Bent Brewstillery. They're amazing. They've been hosting. And
Cool. Is this going to be a one-off event, or are you going to do this?
We've done a few.
Okay.
This is our fifth.
That's okay. Your fifth one.
Yeah, it's fifth. Yeah, it's the fifth one. Well, there was one of them I didn't have as much to do with, but I helped host the first one. Then we did the second one that was more of a film event than the third. No, and then we did a fourth in January. Part of that was I did a short film called Your Blind Spot, which is a writer named Frank Wheeler Jr., and Frank is now in Milwaukee. He was in Nebraska. He's this great crime writer that came out and said, hey, I've been wanting to do more of a screenplay. You want to work with me on this and direct it? Fuck yes,
Wow.
absolutely. Yeah, I've been really fortunate to gain that. I love adaptations, and I went from having nothing that I wanted to adapt, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, something like that, to where I don't even know where to start anymore. I've been trying to do more features and raise money.
What changed?
Just getting in with these crime writers,
Okay.
getting to know all these indie crime novelists and writers, and they're fucking awesome. And it's just this pool, and they're really helpful to one another. They let you know, they all know each other, even though they're all over the goddamn world. And Frank is someone that I just have had a blast with. We're really happy with the short. And then we've been doing this Noir at the Bar, and I'm hosting it. This next one at Bent, like I said, it's July 23rd, and that one is, we're going to have this guy, Dennis DeFoya. Dennis has had all of his films optioned, if I remember correctly. He's had none of them been made into films yet, except we did a short of his years ago, but our footage got corrupted. It fucking sucked. It broke my heart completely.
Sure.
And this was a while ago. And what really sucked is that besides the fact that Dennis and I become good friends, is it was the first crime adaptation that I ever did. And I was like, this is the first baby I really got to do, and I was really proud of it. Great actors, the whole 9 yards, great DP, and we just saved the footage recently. And so we've been editing it, so the big thing is this next Noir at the Bar, I'll be hosting, because a lot of times when the writers are going to be reading, they don't want to host also, and there's no one else. There's a couple of people who might host it, but I'm just good at yapping on and what have you.
I was going to say, you have. We did public speaking when we screened your film. We did an artist talk, and it was very effortless, much like this interview is. I think you've got a lot. You're just a really intelligent guy who's got, and you know a lot.
Appreciate it.
And so, and you have an ease of explaining what it is that you're working on. So, Noir at the Bar. Tell us again, where is that going to be? It's on July 23rd.
July 23rd. Nuts. I'm trying to remember the exact time. I think it's 7 or 7:30. It's going to be at Bent Brewstillery. They're out in Roseville, but they've kind of been subsumed by like a lot of the Northeast breweries and such, and we're really psyched about that. We're going to be screening Dennis DeFoya's How to Jail. We're going to have a bunch of awesome writers, some from around here, like Christy Belcamino, who we've worked with before, and Neil Smith, who I started mentioning. I've been trying to do more features. We have the rights to one of Neil's book. He's got a long history of books. Really fucking good writer. Really like him. And we've had this one called Hog Dog, and we did the trailer of. We've been trying to make it into a feature, and it's just, it's just playing the feature game and trying to raise the money and all that. That just, makes me want to put both barrels in your mouth. But I'm too dumb to quit. I'm still trying.
But you've been successful at it, though. I mean, you've had some
that's such a
successes,
bizarre ass world. Would you say you're successful, Joan? Yes, exactly.
You get better at what you care about doing, right? I mean, and you find ways to make it happen.
That word successful is so fucking bizarre, isn't it? That's why I wanted to ask you, because you do the same face where it's just like, oh, I'm successful. It's like, I am. Like, if I'm successful, I feel so bad for the other people who aren't. Holy shit. Like, you poor bastards.
It really is interesting. That is a really interesting question. I should probably ask everybody that. I bet it would make everybody feel uncomfortable.
Oh, completely. And especially it's like, I mean, and besides the fact that it's like, you don't, because I think there's like, that's like the idea of saying, yeah, I'm not a fan of like the idea of me being an artist or whatever, but it is one of the monikers that comes on, what have you, and whatever. But it's so funny where it's just like to say, oh yeah, I'm successful. It's kind of like saying, oh, I'm done. I'm full.
I'm done. I did it. I did what I came here to do.
Right. All of a sudden, I'm Daniel Plainfield at the end, just saying, I'm finished. Like I'm not.
I also think that is actually an artistic personality trait, to like not feel like you're ever done, and that you I had a guest on here earlier in the show, Tacoumba Aiken, who said I have to create every day. I have to make stuff every day. And I think a lot of us do. And
I started going nuts recently. I got my girlfriend to deal with me. I was just getting cranky, and I was like, because I kept having these projects that weren't working out, and then for the 1 minute, all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I'm finally getting back into rehearsals. Oh, and I've got to plug this. This is the thing I've been working on right now.
Do it.
It's pretty fun too, because it's a GLBT theater company in town called Gadfly. Really cool bunch. I'm really happy I got brought in, and they're doing a horror grouping of plays, and so that's fun. That's this frontier piece, and it's going to be opening on the 10th. It's 2 different sections of plays, though. Mine's in section 2, so technically it's opening on the 10th of July, but the 11th is mine, and each one is 3 different plays, and I'm really psyched to be a part of it. That's the next big thing I want to promote it because they've been amazing in helping us out. They're great for artists. As we put all of it together, we just had a production meeting last night, and it was all about, hey, what do you need? What can we do for you? Which is really tough because it's 6 different plays. So to try and help and babysit the other directors, not babysit. We're not being
anticipate their needs,
right? Exactly, and try to push yourself for what else they're doing. It's so great. It's amazing when you deal with producers because they can really be your best friends or your worst fucking enemies. And especially I've got with Killing Joke Films, it's my company, so who I get to bring in and work with, like Chris Buchers, for example, is the producer I work with a lot, and Bridget Cronin, who she does a lot of my exec work. It's great. It's kind of like that thing that. Oh, good grief! The King of Filth had an interview recently. I think it was a speaking piece of. Good grief!
It's okay. I don't know.
Directed Pink Flamingos.
Oh, John Waters.
John Waters.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a long day already.
It's okay.
I'm even hyper warm from everything. I ran my dog like a mile and a half. And
You're doing great, Paul.
It keeps getting lazy and doesn't want to run. Like, come on, you're half pit bull. You're all muscle, and you're telling me you don't want to run. Anyway, Waters had this great interview. I don't know if you saw this. It was amazing because he said for him, going back to success. Look what we did. We brought it all around.
Yeah.
That was intentional.
That's good.
Yeah. And it was this idea that he said, for me, success is I never have to deal with assholes.
Ooh.
And isn't that a fucking great concept?
Wow.
And that's something I looked around where I'm like, I know a lot of the theater people, actors, whatever, and people to work with and to collaborate with, and I'm like, that's such a powerful statement to be like, you're at that point where I don't have to deal with assholes.
Wow.
Isn't that awesome?
Yes, it is.
I want to say it was like a commencement speech, and of course he says that shit.
You have to love him. He really hits the nail on the head in a lot of
Absolutely.
different ways. Well, where can people find out more about you? I know you got a website, right?
Yep. Killing Joke Films is I don't have a theater company, but that's my film company. It's just killingjokefilms.com. We've got, of course, a Facebook page on the Facebook, and I'm
Sweet.
Paul von Stoetzel. I'm on there. I promote myself as well. I don't try to for a long time, it was just me behind the company. I was like, fuck that. I need to get out there on a personal level, which is really fun because then like we bring in a lot of interns because if, say, for example, MCTC have to do, God, I forget how many hours of intern work. And because I'm actually incorporated, I can bring them in and say, hey, what do you want to do for these hours? What am I working on? What can we do? And it's really fun to have that and be able to bring people in. And at the same time, too, it's me running it. So I get to still say, there's no, there's
you're in charge.
Yep, exactly. It's massive.
It's a good place to be.
It's a great thing. Like Lars von Trier's interview, Trier was just like laughing, and he's like, "Are you kidding? This is so great to do what I do because I'm not. It's not a matter of being in charge. I get to make the rules, and no one even knows what the game is." It's like that's a really good fucking way of putting it.
These are all very inspirational quotes. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on the show.
Thank you so much,
for
Joan.
coming.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited about all the things you have going on this summer. I'm going to be excited to be there at the
thank you.
Noir at the Bar. That sounds super fun.
It's really fun. All the writers read from what they're doing. We all drink. Bent is amazing. They've hosted us before. I've shot at Bent. Yes, and thank you so much for what you do for artists too. Thank you so much, Joan.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
No more people that you know, more people that you know, more people that you know, more people. I hate no more people more than anybody else. I hate you no more.
Thank you so much for joining us with this week's episode of Joan of Art. I want to thank my guests, Tacoumba Aiken, Sonya Berlovitz, and Paul von Stoetzel. We'll be back next week with 3 more intriguing and inspiring artists as we investigate and celebrate people who make art. I'll see you next week.
Dear madam, dear sir, dear madam, dear sir.